everybody, and welcome to the Ultimate List. Today we're going to be trying to assemble the top 10 best wrestlers of all time. I'm Ryan Woodchuck Coons. I'll be throwing in my input here and there. We also have J.R. Wheeler and Lamont Coleman. Hello, fellas.
Woodchuck, glad to be here.
I think today's debate's going to get pretty heated. I know there's strong opinions when it comes to who's the best wrestler. A lot of different things come into it. Who's the best entertainer? Who does got the best in-ring ability? I think we're going to have a lot of button heads in this discussion today.
It can't get any more heated than our usual lunch meetings. I mean, this is what we do at lunch.
I think it's going to be a good time.
Yes.
But JR, let's start with your list. Let's go down and see what you had to start
Well, I'll
with.
tell you what, as the oldest panelist, I tried to look at it generationally as well as the things you described with entertainment value, who could work the mic, who is the athlete. So starting off with my number 10 wrestler of all time, a local favorite from Pittsburgh, held the belt for 11 years, Bruno Sammartino is number 10. Going on with number 9, we come forward a little bit more. I've got at number 9, Triple H. At number 8, from the Hart Dungeon, Bret the Hitman Hart. At 7, because I wanted to get somebody from another alliance, and because of his loyalty to that alliance, Sting comes in at my number 7 pick. At 6, the king of the Attitude Era, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Number 5, arguably the biggest wrestler that's ever wrestled, Andre the Giant. At 4, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. At 3, even though he's a movie star now, at one time he was the biggest star in the WWE, The Rock. My top 2, both legends of wrestling. At number 2, the leader of the Four Horsemen, Ric Flair. And of course, even though he's a lousy wrestler, but he was the best marketer on the planet, at number 1, I've got Hulk Hogan.
All right. Well, yeah, let's get through these lists before we start attacking each other. So I'll go through my list now. And I had 6 people on this list that I thought there's no way you guys would not have these on. And I didn't hear some of them on JR's. But at number 10, I had a Pittsburgh guy, but I had Kurt Angle. Mm-hmm. And I thought some guys that are going to get overlooked on this list are the guys that didn't make it to the big time so much. They didn't get a lot of the WWE time or the WCW time, and if they did make it, they weren't a big star. And one of the guys I have on there is RVD, Rob Van Dam, because I think he is one of the most talented wrestlers in the ring. And while he didn't do a lot interview-wise, I think his wrestling ability is so far above.
And he just came back. Hey.
Then I also had 2 of yours, JR. I had The Rock and Stone Cold from the Attitude Era. I think those are 2 can't misses. Also have number 6, Macho Man, who was unbelievable on the mic and also could jump off that top rope like nobody's business. And then 2 guys that met each other a couple times. At number 5 and 4, I had Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, and The Undertaker, who's still going strong and still putting on...
Strong's a little...
his matches at WrestleMania.
You fight once a year and you get the win. I don't know. But that's okay.
That's strong.
Okay.
The biggest stage of the year, the man puts on the most anticipated match. And then I had 2 and 3, Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan. I think those guys are like the godfathers, if you will. You got to have them on the list.
Can we take guesses who your number 1 is?
Number 1, the man who changed wrestling, who came in the early 90s and just changed the way people saw wrestling and brought in the tables and the chairs and brought a whole new level of entertainment is the homicidal, suicidal, genocidal Sabu, who spent most of his time in ECW, but undoubtedly the best wrestler of all time.
We'd have won that bet, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
So, Lamont, what do you got going on?
Well, like you guys, I'm just a wrestling fan. I'm not a historian or don't pretend to be by any sort of imagination. I looked at it from my history of watching wrestling, and it has its ebbs and flows, as everybody said. Different periods come in, and you look for those people who elevated wrestling to those periods. And like you said before, there's some people who may not be on the list as the all-time greatest, but I think they deserve some mention here. So I'll bring it up on my list. Number 10, I have Stone Cold. I think that's, from what I hear, I think everybody had that on their,
Right.
had him on their list at some point, so I won't go any further into that. Number 9, I had Jimmy Snuka, the Superfly. He's the first guy that I saw that actually was an aerial artist to some degree. He brought a level of excitement to the game. I kind of cheated with my next pick. Number 8, I put the Legion of Doom. LOD. It's not, I know we were supposed to pick wrestlers, but you can't mention one without the other.
Sure.
They have won the belts in all 3 of the major federations, and they're physically
He
awesome
says that
to look
you
at.
just sneak Paul Ellering in there too. He gets 3 for the price of one.
Well, that's
okay.
okay. Number 7, Ricky Steamboat. He elevated the game of the Honky Tonk Man. He had famous matches with Macho Man Randy Savage.
Sure, yeah.
But he also brought his own culture into it too, which a lot of wrestlers, people of color, usually can't do. They're usually starting out early. They're the heel, not so much the face. He's been the face for a lot of years.
Plus he played Cal.
And he played Cal. And he played Cal. Number 6 may be a little controversial, but like I said, me being a fan from when I was a kid, this is the first bad guy that really intimidated the wrestlers. And his name is Ken Patera, the Olympic strongman.
Well,
He's got some strong credentials behind him. He's a big guy, athlete, Pan American Games athlete, and he broke necks. How can you not? How can you not have that guy on your list? Number 5, Shawn Michaels. Of course, he's Mr. WrestleMania, the spotlight. He's the man as far as the showstoppers go. Number 4, going back to cheat a little bit, Fabulous Freebirds. From my era, they were the first guys that I saw that weren't your traditional tag team. There were 3 guys. They incorporated music. It's kind of like when Stone Cold came in, you hear the crash in the mirror. That starts the whole thing. With Freebirds, it was the song Freebird by Leonard Skinner. Crowd erupted. Whether they were a heel or a face at the time, they brought something that I think Gorgeous George was the only one who had music before that, but they elevated it. Number 2, Hulk Hogan, because he carried wrestling in the 80s. You can't mention wrestling without mentioning Hulk Hogan in the 80s. Right. Number 2, Bret Hart, great tactician, a graduate of the Dungeon, the infamous Dungeon, solid wrestler. And number 1, Bruno Sammartino, because of course he is a Pittsburgh native, and in the 70s when wrestling wasn't on television as much as it is now, and you didn't have the marketing and whatnot behind it as you do now, he carried wrestling on his shoulders. He basically built Madison Square Garden on his back as far as wrestling goes. Got to mention Bruno.
All right. So what overlap do we got? Which ones are definitely on the list? I think Stone Cold was on there.
Well, it's real easy. I mean, and I'm willing to go back one because both of you have HBK at number 5, and I had him at number 4, so I'm very willing to put him at number 5 and then to lock him in. I think Hulk Hogan was on all the lists, and like you said, Stone Cold, I think, was on all the lists.
All right, so let's get them on the list officially. So where are they going?
Well, that'll be fun. That's later on. I'm still, who knows? We still got to maybe see if Sabu's going to make the number 1.
So how do we want to go about it then? We got to find 10 names and then order them? Is that how you want to do it?
Well, I think I think we have to get to 10 names first. So,
Okay.
I think that's something we'll get to do in the next segment, which will be a lot of fun because God knows I'm pulling for Sabu.
All right, so we go into a commercial then for now? Let's go to a commercial. We'll be right back. We're going to figure out the 10 names on this list, and then we're going to try to figure out the order. It's going to be a bloodbath right after this.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Something's not right.
My first symptoms were
constant tingling in my toes.
Double vision. They said you have multiple sclerosis.
Kind of had to get a grasp on reality.
I had to adapt and change very rapidly.
I had to learn how to drive with my hands. Yeah, that was interesting.
A symptom may cause you not to be able to do that anymore. And at one point, I wasn't able to do any of those.
Since I've been cycling, it's definitely helped my walking.
It's a fantastic opportunity to be working together with a common goal of curing MS, and sharing is the key.
CUTV always has the action, and now you can too by ordering CUTV programming on DVD. To own your favorite CUTV moments, just send $16.95 in a check payable to SAI, care of CUTV programming order, 250 University Avenue, California, PA 15419. Order now.
Hey guys, it's time for news. Come on, guys. News.
Let's go.
Hey, News Center starts right now. Right now.
All right. Can't get anything.
Seriously?
Yeah,
I don't think.
you.
Guys, we gotta do news. Hey, news.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Bomb.
You're watching CUTV, California University Television.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Ultimate List. I'm Ryan Woodshot-Coons. J.R. Wheeler and Lamont Coleman are with me, and we're trying to figure out the top 10 best wrestlers of all time. We both all three of us gave our lists at this point, so we know where our mindset is a little bit. And we got 3 wrestlers that we all agreed on that we're no need to discuss any farther, and that's Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid. We don't even discuss that anymore. We know that 3 of the spots are done. We got to fill 7 more spots. Out of those 7 spots, there were 4 spots that 2 out of the 3 had on their list. So let's start that discussion. First one out of that, JR and Lamont both had Bruno Sammartino on the list. I did not have him on because I don't think he belongs on the list.
This from the man who put Sam number 1. That's okay. Hey, the only reason why I put, like I said, I put Bruno on there because if you're looking, there was wrestling before, the WWE Attitude Era and everything like that. In the regional wrestling ranks, he was number 1 because he worked for Vince's dad. He carried wrestling. As Lamont said earlier, he built Madison Square Gardens. He was the champ for 11 years. I mean, 11 years. I'm not saying Ric Flair had 16 or 17 times, lose and win. He was the champ for 11 years. Even Zbyszko breaking his neck couldn't stop the man. So, I mean, I just think, and if you look at his body and his wrestling style, and this is before steroids, the man is a living legend.
He's an athlete. I mean, before wrestling became sports entertainment, it was a sport. It was viewed as a sport. Right. This guy basically came out of the steel mills and fire halls and took wrestling to the mainstream Madison Square Garden. You can't have a list without having Bruno Sammartino on it.
Well, I have the thought process that just because you're one of the first doesn't mean you're one of the best. Just because you did it way back when doesn't mean you're a legend just because you're really old. The guys, his matches weren't exciting. I've seen, some Bruno matches, and there's not a lot going on in the old days of wrestling. I think maybe the title reign of 11 years, that gives it some substance for sure. And it's him selling out Madison Square Garden so many times would definitely is a good point. So maybe I can get him on the list because of the title reign. And
as I said, I had him on at number 10 just because I think he deserves to be on the list. Not high, because I agree with you, working Mike and everyone like that is in the modern age wrestling, you're really an entertainer. But to carry the banner of all the old-time wrestlers, Lou Thez and all these guys, even Lamont necessarily, Gorgeous George in the 50s, when wrestling was really big, when TV first started, I think if Bruno carries that mantle for all those guys that came before it turned into a circus.
I can get on board with that. So let's put Bruno on the list. We don't know what order yet, but how high he'll actually be on that list, but we'll put Bruno's name on the list. Now another guy who I thought was a no-brainer to put on this list that only 2 out of the 3 of us had was The Rock. Now he was an enormous presence in wrestling, but Lamont, you didn't feel he belonged on the list.
As JR said, there's only so many people you can put on the list. I think that as far as that era of wrestling, the Attitude Era, it came between a choice between The Rock and Stone Cold. And what I liked about Stone Cold, and not necessarily didn't like about The Rock, was the Stone Cold transformed the crowd into liking him. He was an anti-hero. He never really changed his persona. Rock came in as a babyface, and that didn't go over so well, so he had to develop something else that put him where he was. Stone Cold pretty much stayed in character throughout his run in the WWE. And even now, when you hear that mirror break, it explodes. Not saying that when you hear The Rock do his catchphrases and everything, but Stone Cold, in my opinion, is just a little bit higher than The Rock. Well, if we had 11 or 12 spots on the list, then I could put The Rock there.
See, and the reason why I had The Rock on there is because during the Attitude Era, I mean, his matches versus Stone Cold were legendary, first of all. And just to correct one thing, remember when Stone Cold got to the WWE, he was still carrying the mantle, stunning Steve Austin. So it's not like he just jumped to the WWE and there was Stone Cold. That kind of developed because he sort of got PO'd at people, and then finally, you know, when I just finished watching the documentary, it was lightning in a bottle. That whole thing with wrestling
Jake the Snake,
yeah. And then he was doing all that religious stuff. He just came out of the top of his head, you know, 316, and it just took off from there. So I like their matches together. Plus, even today, you know, he just made it. The Rock was just there for another 2 years, making another run in the WWE, and I just kind of felt that, you know, putting him on there. If you talk to most non-wrestling fans, they're going to know The Rock, and that's, I think, is important as well, too. Because I mean, you know, we can name Doink the Clown, and wrestling fans are going to know who that is. But The Rock, the whole world knows who that is, and that's why I thought he deserved to be on there.
And going back to the Stone Cold thing, that whole attitude that he had that propelled him into stardom started in ECW when he got fired. And ECW was only popular because of Sabu. Just keep that on the back of your heads as we approach these bottom couple. But as far as The Rock, I think once he did get established, though, when he was a good guy, he was the top good guy. And when he went bad, too, and he was the top bad guy, and everyone still loved that guy. And when it's one of those deals when the music hit, the roof blew off the building, and people were tuning in to see Raw just because of The Rock. And it's like JR said, people outside of wrestling, there were people wearing Rock shirts and saying, you know what The Rock is cooking, and all the stuff, all the catchphrases The Rock did was outside of wrestling. Just like Stone Cold and Hogan, I think he goes beyond wrestling, and he has to be on this list.
Like I don't have a problem putting him on the list. It was just I wanted to mention some others on my list at the time. We want to put him there. Let's put him there.
That's great. We're putting The Rock on the list. Rock is our fifth guy. No order yet. All right, two of JR and Lamont both thought Bret the Hitman Hart should be on the list. I left him off the list. I left him off the list because I never liked listening to the guy talk. I thought he was so monotone, and he always said the same things. And but you can't deny the guy was a fantastic wrestler, very technical.
And that's what he was. In my classifications, he was probably one of the two top. Actually, you know, take the fakery out of it, wrestlers. He could actually wrestle and beat you.
Right.
You know, and just surviving out of the Hart dungeon, you know, with his old man running the dungeon. I said I give him kudos for that because a lot of wrestlers went through that dungeon and didn't make it out.
And when he switched over, another thing that hurts him is when he switched to WCW, and this isn't necessarily on him, but it was done. WCW ruined Bret Hart when he got over there. Because they relied a lot on his mic skills when he first got there. He wasn't doing anything.
That's okay. It's a trade-off because actually it was WCW that actually created Stone Cold Steve Austin because WCW is the one that really fired him. Eric Bischoff fired him. That's what really PO'd him off. So when he came to WWE, he was already set to go. So I don't mind Hart.
Bret Hart's technically sound. I mean, as you said, he's a great. If we take the sports entertainment out of it, put wrestler and technical skills in it, he's one of the top guys. Plus, he's had all major championships in the WWE, much like Shawn Michaels. As Shawn Michaels said, you can't have a Superman without having a Lex Luthor. And I think they balanced each other out great. I think they had great matches. Even when he was a heel, when he went Team Canada and anti-USA, there was heat. He was still a great, as you said, a horrible mic worker. But as far as his skills go and his accomplishments, I think he's one of the guys you have to have on the list.
And to be honest, I was flirting with putting him on my list at some point. I just couldn't get past it. But if 2 out of 3 are with it, I'm all about putting Bret Hart on the list. So Bret's on the list. Now the last guy that 2 out of the 3 picked.
Here's the one that you mentioned before. Here's the one I thought was going to be on everybody's list. That he was just a natural. Not a pun.
Ric Flair we need to discuss because I believe Lamont doesn't feel he belongs in the top 10.
Again, it was just a matter of I wanted to elevate some of the other guys who were on my list, and it was just a matter of it's only 10. Of course, he's a great mic worker. I think he's a hard worker. He's been in the business forever. Everybody mentions wrestling and Ric Flair. If we had 11 or 12, I could definitely include him on my list.
Don't hold it against him. He still gets Christmas cards from Michael P.S. Hayes, so that's why the Freebirds made that list.
Oh, I see.
But I think what he's done with, of course, on his own, being as champ as long as he has, and the work that he's done with the Four Horsemen and how that whole thing came about, he definitely deserves to be on a list. He just didn't make my top 10, but he could be on our top 10.
Right. I think, as Hogan was to WWF, Ric Flair was doing the same thing for WCW. It was like the two giants. So I think if you're going to put Hogan on, you have to put Flair on. So if you're on board,
I'm on board.
Let's put him on the list. So now we got
3 spots.
Seven.
Yeah,
7 guys. We got 3 open spots. This is where it's going to get interesting. So I guess let's start with Lamont. Who on your list? There's 3 spots. We each pick one guy from our list that you feel has to be on there. Let's fight about it.
Well, looking at our list, I think that there's not an aerial or some type of guy that would do something exceptional off the top rope or in the air on that list so far.
You know who does, though? You know who's a hell of a guy off the top rope? Triple moonsaults and things like that?
For that, I'm going to pick Snuka.
All right.
I'm going to pick Snuka. I think he was somewhat underutilized when he was in the WWE, but he had a tremendous physique. He came in as a heel, left as a babyface. They're still talking. I think he won Match of the Year for coming off the top of the steel cage against one of his opponents.
Right. Sure.
I think I think there are a couple of wrestlers on our list that won Match of the Year for some of their feuds and some of their things. I think Snuka is my one pick for that spot on the list.
And he did it all barefoot too.
And barefoot. Didn't break a toe.
Actually, I was going to see. 8 of my 10 are already on the list, so I'm happy. I was actually going to defend another one of your picks. That's where I thought you were going originally. Snooker's good, but I thought Steamboat did just as much aerial stuff, was champion longer, and just was a better known commodity. And that's why I thought you were going with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and I was going to hop on board with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. But
so is that who's your vote for one of these last 3?
Well, no. If I'm picking one of the last 3, and it's not, again, I'm not picking from my list. It's probably going to be The Undertaker because he was one of my honorable mentions.
Right.
So that's probably who I would support is The Undertaker.
Yeah, I think Snuka was definitely innovative with what he did, and he was unique. But I can't see putting him on a top 10 list. But I can get on board with The Undertaker. The Undertaker put on some. And I know you guys say he only wrestles one time a year, but that match, that sells.
Well, that's now though. I mean, let's face it. I mean, he worked an awful lot in the company when he was the Phenom, and he was everywhere.
Right. There's not too many wrestlers that had the same gimmick for that long. I don't know how many years it's been.
Well, Ric Flair's always been Ric Flair.
Well,
he's always been Space Mountain.
Ric Flair's not a gimmick though.
Yeah, but he stole the Nature Boy from an earlier wrestler, so he
he's
can't claim everything.
Ric Flair the butcher, or Ric Flair the cook.
Well, the Undertaker's always. I mean, he had that period where he had the biker gimmick. He didn't always have the same gimmick.
But he was always the Undertaker.
He was
never Mark Calloway. He was always the Undertaker. I think he should be on there.
He was never a dentist.
I'm not knocking The Undertaker. Well, here's my knock at The Undertaker, but I'm not knocking. He's had a very long career, and he's done some innovative things like walking the top rope and those type of things. The Last Ride, those have been great. I think where it changes a little bit for me is this once-a-year thing, and he's getting, as you're winding down your career, you got to think about your legacy and long-term what you mean. I think that by doing what he's doing now in these once-a-year or around WrestleMania things, it diminishes somewhat the longevity of what he's been doing. I think if there's a time to get out, then just take the time and get out, like Shawn Michaels did.
Against The Undertaker.
Against The Undertaker.
All right, so we got Snuka, Steamboat, Undertaker in the mix. Now I have to throw in Sabu. We have to talk about Sabu. Let's open the Sabu discussion.
I do not mind Sabu on the list. I laughed when he was on your list at number 1. Sabu is an innovator, and I have no problem. In fact, I actually support having somebody there representing the true ECW. Not the watered down version that that Titan now puts out there from the WWE. So I have no problem with Sabu on the list per se. I just didn't see him at number 1.
I think you have to look at, Snuka was unique and was innovative with his moves, but he didn't send shockwaves through the wrestling industry. When Sabu came to ECW, they were Eastern Championship Wrestling. And then Sabu introduced the tables and the chairs and the what have you, which changed that whole company, which put that company on the map. And some may argue that launched the Attitude Era in WWE, which brought us Stone Cold and The Rock. All that comes back to Sabu.
Well, I don't know. As we discussed off camera, like I said, I can make the same case for Terry Funk, and he was doing a lot longer with barbed wire and everything than Sabu.
Sure, but Funk wasn't jumping off ropes and doing triple moonsaults and the flips and the what have you. I love Terry Funk. He's a legend. But we're going to have to take a moment here. We have to catch our breath, but we'll be back right after this. We're going to have some more discussion to figure out this ultimate list.
You're watching CUTV, California University Television.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Ultimate List. Things got a little out of hand. We had to do a lot of the discussion off camera, but we did so, and we came up with the list. So here's our 10 wrestlers we know are on the list, but we had to get into some fiery discussion on what order they're going to be in. Fists were thrown, feelings were hurt. But here's the final order, the ultimate list of best professional wrestlers of all time. As you can see, number 10, through hard work, good American know-how, we got Sabu on this list at number 10. Sabu's on there, well-deserving. Number 9, we thought, we all agreed that Ricky Steamboat should be on the list for his innovative moves, his high-flying action. At number 8, we put on The Undertaker. Number 7, Ric Flair made our list.
Oh, no, it's Bruno's number 7.
Number 7 is Bruno.
See, that's what cost him with the Sabu vote.
That's number 6 is Bret Hart. Bret the Hitman Hart, we thought should be on there for his technical wrestling abilities, not so much his talking, because we all know he couldn't do that. Number 5, we had Ric Flair. There he is. Ric Flair is number 5. He had to be in the top 5. Number 4 was The Rock. He was a lot bigger than wrestling, a lot like our other top 5 wrestlers here. Number 3 was Shawn Michaels, Heartbreak Kid, long, illustrious career. In the top 2, number 2, we had Stone Cold. That's Stone Cold's brother, Stone Cold. I wouldn't put him on there, but hey, Stone Cold, Steve Austin was number 2. And number 1, I don't think you could argue with it. Hulk Hogan has to be number 1. He was just the first wrestler to be bigger than life, and he brought all the pageantry to wrestling. And even though he couldn't get it done in the ring, maybe, but he made professional wrestling, which is mostly entertainment in the first place, to that level.
And he was the nanny.
Yeah. So, quick wrap up. Lamont, what do you think about our top 10?
I'm comfortable with it. I don't think we could get everybody on our list, but I think that's good representation of the sport and the subject.
Jared, what do you think about
it? I agree exactly with the commissioner. I think it's a good representative list. I know people are out there and they're going to write in and say, you left off this, left off that. Well, that's what happens when you do any alternate list. So.
Yeah, anytime you get together, 3 knuckleheads sitting in a room talking about wrestling, the lists are going to be all over the place. And I think it was a good discussion, good fiery discussion. I think we got a lot of good work done here today, especially Sabu made that list. It'd be a crime against society if he was. But hey, thank you for tuning into the Ultimate List. I know a lot of people are going to want to talk about our list, and you can do so on the CUTV Facebook page. Just check that out and weigh in. And you'll have more chances to disagree with our Ultimate List as they come down in the future. So we'll see you next time on the Ultimate List.